welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host, Peebo, and you're joining me on another edition of our Four Corners of the Galley movie reviews. I'm here to finally recap, Mission Impossible Fallout, folks. That's right, the sixth installment in the Mission Impossible second trilogy. We have Fallout, directed again by Mr. Christopher McQuarrie, starring Mr. Tom Cruise, Simon Pegg, I'm losing it. Rebecca Ferguson, Ving Rhames, that's what I wanted to get. Henry Cavill, and Miss Angela Bassett. Alright, so let's get into this is the spoiler breakdown, recap, the whole deal for Mission Impossible Fallout. So let's break right into it. So we catch up with Ethan Hunt, 2 years after the events of Rogue Nation. And this actual movie is more of a true sequel to any of the Mission Impossibles. I mean, this one is a complete continuation of Rogue Nation. It only introduced basically three new characters, but no new true villains. Well, one true new villain somewhat. But it basically keeps the exact same crew. We get the bringing back of Miss Rebecca Ferguson, who's Elsie, who's the MI6 agent who Ethan helped take care of and make sure that her name was cleared. And this was 2 years ago. Her name was cleared, but all of a sudden she gets thrusted back into this. And of course, Ethan's back, and he's got his boys Benji, played by Simon Pegg, and he's got his other boy Luther, played by Mr. Ving Rhames, and it's his classic crew. We have the secretary back, played by Alec Baldwin, and then we get a couple new additions. We get Miss Angela Bassett, who is now the director of the CIA, and is basically thinks that she can control and overrule the secretary and IMB. I'm mixing them up with the movie street side IMF. She's over that, and she has basically her right-hand assassin go-to guy in Walker, who is played by Mr. Harry Cavill. And we catch up with Ethan 2 years after the events of Rogue Nation, and he's chilling like always. Ethan's in Belfast, and he's just kind of off on his own lamb kind of thing, off in the distance. And then he gets a mysterious courier shows up. They have like a secret message, and then he gets a book he opens up, and it's an old school recording of IMF, and it's telling him that basically there's some plutonium out there. That basically what they tell us is that 2 years after the events of Rogue Nation and after the catching of Lane, the leader of the syndicate, since then IMF and CIA have strategically gone after the remaining members of the syndicate, and they have tried to take them out. But what has happened now is a group of them, like 12 of them, have come together to form the Apostles, basically a true followers of Lane and his syndicate, who are designing to still cause havoc and corruption throughout the world. And during this time, there was a big event that they released a smallpox virus, and it killed a whole lot of people. Well, now they're trying to get some plutonium. So they're trying to get some plutonium and create some bombs and cause even more issues. So now it's Mr. Ethan's mission, if he chooses, to recover these plutonium bombs, these plutonium cylinders before they make them into bombs. So he gets his boys Benji and Luther, and they go out to Berlin and they try to set up a meet. Well, the meet goes completely bad. Ethan has to decide between saving Luther or getting the plutonium. He ends up eventually, he does something to save Luther so that Luther doesn't get taken or killed. And because of those results, the plutonium gets taken by the Apostles. And this kicks off the new Fallout, because it's the fallout from what Rogue Nation happened, and also the fallout of not securing those plutonium bombs. And they get taken. And of course, all chaos breaks loose after this point. So he helped save Luther, and Luther's now alive, but because of that, the CIA is pissed off, and that's when we meet Miss Angela Bassett, who's the CIA director, and with her is Walker, played by Harry Cavill. They meet up with the secretary and Ethan as they're at the airport, or military airport, trying to leave to go to I think it's London or overseas, to try to find these plutonium bombs that they lost on the loose. Well, the CIA is not happy about that, so she comes in and basically says, you're going to take a liaison, and the liaison is Walker, Mr. Harry Cavill, and he's going to hang out with Ethan and his team to recover this plutonium, and he's there to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And of course, if something goes wrong, he's also there to take out Ethan whenever things go bad. So what happens is you end up getting Ethan having to meet up with the broker who's trying to actually broker these plutonium bombs, and the broker actually has a connection to Mission Impossible 1, where she is the actual daughter of Max, the broker from before, who was the original broker in the Mission Impossible show. So she plays the daughter, which is a really cool, callback to the first one and kind of tying everything together. So they're supposed to meet up with this broker, and then this other individual who's the broker is now going to meet up with John Lark. And John Lark is actually working with the Apostles, and he's one of the ones that helped release the smallpox virus onto the nation. And they're trying to basically take on John Lark, take his identity, Ethan's going to disguise himself as John Lark, meet up with the daughter of Max, and try to broker and get the plutonium bombs that way. So they end up at this big charity event, which is like a big party and club and a private in the back. They go to this party, and this is where we get the great bathroom scene. So you have Walker, who's played by Harry Cavill, and Ethan together chasing after this guy, John Lark. So they end up meeting this individual who's at a stall, and this huge fight breaks out because they're trying to take out John Lark and steal his identity at the same time. So a huge fight breaks out between them, and you get the great Harry Cavill reloading scene, and they actually get their butts whooped by this guy, John Lark. And the only reason they end up getting anywhere is because Elsie shows up, and she ends up actually killing John Lark. So everything goes awry. Ethan ends up taking his place anyways without the mask. He wanted to wear a mask, of course. Oh, sorry. Before we get to that, after they lose the plutonium, the Apostles actually kidnap or take this doctor or scientist who can take the plutonium bombs and create and turn them into bombs, and he actually turns them into bombs. So Ethan ends up capturing this guy, and they show this scene where he's in a hospital, and then they show CNN footage where it shows that the 3 bombs that they created actually went off. One in Jerusalem, one in Israel, and one in Iran, I want to say. I don't know. It was very strategic. Rome, I think it was, in holy places. And it shows it goes off. And, they're like, the guy's all happy, and he's like, oh, okay. And they're watching CNN footage from this, and he goes, look, I'll tell you where the rest of the Apostles are if you tell them to read my, this Miranda, which is like, this big statement they want to make on why they made these bombings. So they get CNN, they send this information to CNN, they show that they're reading this statement. So the guy ends up programming the code into the phone because he's all happy. He thinks he's won. Of course not. It's a trick. It's classic Mission Impossible, of course. The walls fall down. He's like, what the heck's going on? Up rolls Ethan, and Luther's there, and then Wolf Blitzen, who's playing in the CNN guy, he ends up taking his mask off, and it's Benji. Benji finally gets to wear a mask, and he plays it really good. And the guy's tricked. He's like, it's only been an hour since your accident, man. We tricked you. Those bombs have gone off. So they basically use this doctor to figure out how to get to the Apostles in their network. So that's where they're going in the airport. They're going to try to chase after these Apostles so they can stop these bombs. And they trick the doctor into thinking that they didn't with this great classic Mission Impossible first scene. Like the first scene that you ever see in the original Mission Impossible, where they're trying to convince another doctor and they're killing a girl. I mean, great callbacks. I love the way that they call back to the originals in this one, so that was great. So of course they get to this thing, the big fight happens. Ethan ends up meeting up with this new broker, Max's daughter, and she ends up, almost trying to get killed. So Ethan gets her out of there, and they go on this run. They go on, they go on the run because now the John Lark guy is dead, or which they think he's dead. They don't know if that is John Lark. Now they've gotten Max as the broker's daughter out of there successfully because there's another group actually going after all these people because they were after John Lark because, all this thing. He's causing all these issues with the Apostles. So, of course, Ethan's on the run. But then they try to pull this, I don't know if they're trying to really pull a fakeroo on us or really not. But basically, when we get to John Lark and he's in the stall, they try to grab his phone, and the phone is all jacked up, and that's what's got the information on it. But then we see Walker meet up with his CIA director, and he hands a phone to see his CIA director and says, here's everything you need on John Lark, and this will be the information. And that's the wrong phone because the phone we saw was the one shot up. So right then and there, I knew that Walker was John Lark. And I don't think they really tried to hide it because they really show it off in the next couple of scenes afterwards. But it's really a cheesy little twist that they really didn't have to go with. It was kind of obvious. So what we find out is Walker, who's the CIA assassin man and top killer, is actually John Lark, who's working with Lane and trying to help save him in the whole deal. So what does the brokers and the Apostles want? Well, they want Ethan to break out Lane from prison. And you're like, wait, Lane's still around? Yes, Lane's been transported around for 2 years. Nation after nation wants a piece of Lane because they all want him to basically deal for all these issues he's caused throughout the world. So he's been transported all across the world. So they want who they think is John Lark, who Ethan is now playing. They want John Lark to help them, the Apostles, to help them break out Lane. And if they break out Lane, they'll give John Lark the plutonium, is what they tell him. So they come up with this idea and plan to get Lane out in this and when they're on the road trying to transport him in this, breakout heist. So they kind of show what they want, and Ethan's like, or John's playing the guy like, oh, okay, we'll go on with this plan. And he doesn't think the plan is gonna work the way they're trying to cage him off and block everything off. So he ends up doing his own plan. He ends up knocking freaking Lane into the water, and then he has Benji and Luther, of course, pick up Lane on the other side, going through, doing the flip around while he's distracting everybody, knocking them in, and then going on the run. He's got his boys taking care of it, and then Ethan has to go on the run, of course, and he's got this great motorcycle scene where he's got no helmet on. He's doing like 150 through the streets, and he's just flying all around. Classic Ethan, just being Ethan. He's flying all around the streets, whipping through things. He finally does crash. He ends up having to run, cutting a net, and dropping down a hole, which gets him to his boys, of course, in a boat waiting. Great scene, and they sneak off with Lane the way they're supposed to, and they're like, and they're like, they don't tell what they're doing because they're trying to do a misdirect so no one knows what's really going on. So they end up getting Lane. They end up taking Lane to their London hideout area. So they got Walker with them, and who meets them there? But the secretary, the IMF secretary, Alec Baldwin, he's there. He's like, what's going on, guys? We got to figure this out. He goes, you can't believe me. You broke out Lane. He goes, look, this is the only way I could do it to get back the bombs for the Apostles. They say I had to break out Lane. He's like, all right. So they are going to fake out Lane. They're going to do a Lane fake out. They're going to put Benji in a Lane mask with a Lane thing and take him to the Apostles and try to do a fake out so they can get the bombs. So they put Benji next to Lane, sitting back to back, and they put the mask on. They switch all around, and they seamlessly take Lane away. They take Benji away in the makeup, and they supposedly leave Lane chained up while Walker's watching. But it's all a trick. It's all a trick by Ethan to find out what side Walker's on. The minute Ethan and them walk away, Walker takes the little camera that's watching Lane, throws it on the ground, starts talking to Lane like he's best friends. And of course, it's not Lane, it's Benji in a mask. So it's Benji pulling off great mask work again. So Benji's in a mask, he completely tricks him. They find out Walker's on the other side. Just then and there, the British police show up, and they're trying to take Lane because they figured out this base, this hideaway that they have. But half the members are fake, and they're all Apostle, and all pandemonium breaks out, of course. So Lane breaks free with Walker. They get away. They get away to go set up what they need to set up. And now Ethan, Benji, and Luther are on the run because during all the commotion, Walker gets into basically a hand-on-hand combat with the secretary of IMF, and he ends up stabbing him and killing him right then and there in all the commotion. He breaks free with Lane. They go about their thing, and now Ethan, Luther, and Benji have to figure out where to find these bombs and stop everything before everything goes off. They also meet back up with Elsie, who's helping them out. And then, of course, they got the original team from last time re-helping them, trying to chase after Lane one more time. During this whole little thing, Walker threatens, when Ethan tries to chase down Walker when he gets away on a helicopter, he shows him he's like, Ethan's holding onto an elevator at the bottom, and Walker just looks at him like, man, don't you ever die? He goes, that's all right. He goes, don't worry. I got a special surprise for you. I'm their guardian. And he shows a picture of Ethan's wife, or ex-wife, of course, that he's had on the run. And Ethan just kind of looks at him like, what the heck? And it's his ex-wife. And he's like, okay. So what you come to find out is, where they have set these bombs up are in the middle of like Kazakhstan, in the middle of nowhere. They have these two humongous plutonium bombs set up. Because remember, there should be a third one, but they gave the third one as a gift to Ethan beforehand, thinking he was John Lark. So he has a third one that's never been set. So it's just a plutonium, no bomb made. They've made two bombs. But they set these two bombs up in the middle of like Kazakhstan, right on this water well that I guess affects China and India and will poison their water because it'll drop radiation into their water and make all of the water going up into these nations bad. So basically wiping out 1/3 of the world are what they're trying to do. But the little twist that comes with it is at this base camp, Walker played somebody else and gave a full grant or whatever to Ethan's ex-wife, who's now married to a new doctor, and they both are helping out and doing humanitarian work there. So now he's got Ethan's wife there, and when they show up and they finally discover where Lane is, because they have the location and everything, Ethan sees his ex-wife and he's like, oh my goodness, and he all flips out. And you have this great scene where you got Benji and Luther and Elsie, who's also in love with him, and they got this weird whole chemistry going back. They're all standing there watching Ethan have a conversation with his ex-wife and then play it off like they're nobody. The minute she leaves with her husband, they all break out and run trying to go look for the bombs. So that's a great thing. The ending is just wild and crazy. I won't get full in details, but they have some amazing, amazing fight scenes. One, you get this amazing helicopter battle between Ethan and Walker, played by Henry Cavill, where they're literally going back and forth in helicopters and they're battling out before they end up having, a fist fight on a ledge hanging off that they got to end with. Classic Mission Impossible style. They end up stopping the bomb simultaneously, barely getting it away. They end up capturing Lane again this time, but, being smarter how they transport him. They expose Walker as being the double agent, so the CIA is happy about that. They save everybody and they get away. But it's just got... What I will admit about this one, it is great, crazy, intense action. I mean, from chase scenes to classic Ethan running, to classic Ethan motorcycle, to classic face mask, to classic out of control, doing things over the top Mission Impossible. This one was full to the brim, packed, great movie. For my money, it is number 2 right below Mission Impossible. I would give this a 8.9 out of 10. I thought it was great, fun, intense. It really doesn't dwell too much on a lot of stuff because at this point we know all these characters and Walker's just an added body and a villain, so you don't really go deep into his story. But you already know Elsie, you already know the wife. They brought back Luther and Benji, who've been around forever, so you don't have to tell more about them. So they just really get to the whole story and they don't play and they really just go through with it. A lot of people have compared this to Mad Max. I don't think it's as fast and crazy as Mad Max, but it's definitely intense and has a great action to it, and overall just a phenomenal movie. Yeah. So there you go, folks. There's my Mission Impossible Fallout breakdown recap review. Hope you enjoyed it. Got the other ones right here if you want to check out Mission Impossible 1, 2, and 3. Also got Rogue Nation, Ghost Protocol, and Rogue Nation here too. Until next time, folks, I thank everybody. Good night, Ted.